My world collapsed with the weight of a single phone call, the nurse's voice cutting through the late afternoon stillness like a blade. "Your son is in the ICU, ma'am." The sterile chill of St. Joseph's Medical Center in Phoenix seemed to seep through the phone, freezing me in place as her words ricocheted in my skull. Just hours ago, I'd been unpacking souvenirs from a London trip, the scent of Earl Grey tea tins and the gleam of Big Ben trinkets filling my kitchen with a traveler's joy. I'd been humming, picturing Jacob's teasing grin when I surprised him with his gifts, his hazel eyes sparking with that familiar mix of sarcasm and love. Instead, a voicemail had been waiting, unnoticed for 4 days. Its timestamp a silent accusation. October 6, 2025, 2:14 a.m. How long has he been there? My fingers gripped the edge of the granite countertop, the cold stone grounding me as the room spun. I replayed the message, the nurse's calm professionalism slicing deeper each time. Mr. Carter was admitted 4 days ago after a motorcycle accident. 4 days. My only child, my Jacob, fighting for his life while I'd been sipping coffee outside Buckingham Palace, oblivious, snapping photos of guards in red coats. Guilt clawed at my chest, a heavy, suffocating weight. How could I not have known? If my story resonates with you, please subscribe to the channel and join me for more stories of strength and truth. The drive to St. Joseph's was a blur of red lights and honking horns, the Phoenix sunset bleeding orange across the sky. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, my world collapsed with the weight of a single phone call, the nurse's voice cutting through the late afternoon stillness like a blade. "Your son is in the ICU, ma'am." The sterile chill of St. Joseph's Medical Center in Phoenix seemed to seep through the phone, freezing me in place as her words ricocheted in my skull. Just hours ago, I'd been unpacking souvenirs from a London trip, the scent of Earl Grey tea tins and the gleam of Big Ben trinkets filling my kitchen with a traveler's joy. I'd been humming, picturing Jacob's teasing grin when I surprised him with his gifts, his hazel eyes sparking with that familiar mix of sarcasm and love. Instead, a voicemail had been waiting, unnoticed, for 4 days. Its timestamp a silent accusation, October 6th, 2025, 2:14 a.m. How long has he been there? My fingers gripped the edge of the granite countertop, the cold stone grounding me as the room spun. I replayed the message, the nurse's calm professionalism slicing deeper each time. Mr. Carter was admitted 4 days ago after a motorcycle accident. 4 days? My only child? My Jacob? Fighting for his life while I'd been sipping coffee outside Buckingham Palace, oblivious, snapping photos of guards in red coats. Guilt clawed at my chest, a heavy, suffocating weight. How could I not have known? If my story resonates with you, please subscribe to the channel and join me for more stories of strength and truth. The drive to St. Joseph's was a blur of red lights and honking horns, the Phoenix sunset bleeding orange across the sky. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, the leather creaking under my grip. Why hadn't Ryan called me? Jacob's stepfather had my itinerary, my international number, every detail meticulously shared before I left. I trusted him, believed his warm assurances that he'd look after Jacob like his own. The hospital's 4th-floor ICU loomed like a fortress, its glass doors reflecting my pale, disheveled face as I pushed through. The air inside was sharp with antiseptic. The hum of machinery, a low, relentless pulse. "I'm Margaret Carter, Jacob's mother," I said, my voice barely steady, each word a battle against the panic rising in my throat. "I just found out." The nurse, a woman with a badge reading Karen, looked up from her station, her eyes softening with a flicker of recognition that made my stomach drop. "Mrs. Carter, we've been trying to contact family. Jacob's been critical since admission." Her words landed like stones, each one sinking deeper into my chest. I swallowed, forcing my voice to hold. "Where's Ryan? He's Jacob's emergency contact. He should be here." Karen hesitated, her fingers pausing on the chart, her gaze flicking to a colleague before returning to me. "Mr. Evans was here briefly the night of the accident. He signed some forms but hasn't returned. We've called him repeatedly." The floor tilted beneath my feet, the fluorescent lights above buzzing faintly, amplifying the surreal horror. Ryan?
The man who'd stood at my wedding altar 5 years ago, vowing to treat Jacob like his own son, was gone? That's impossible, I whispered, though a cold certainty was already pooling in my gut, sharp and bitter like the coffee I'd left untouched on the counter. Karen's steady gaze held mine, her silence louder than words. The doctor Nguyen will update you soon. Would you like to see Jacob now? I nodded, fear clawing at my chest, my breath shallow, as she led me down a corridor lined with beeping monitors and hushed voices. Nothing could have prepared me for room 407. The door swung open, and there was Jacob, my vibrant, motorcycle-loving boy, reduced to a fragile figure tangled in tubes and wires. His face was swollen, barely recognizable under a map of bruises and bandages, his dark hair matted against a surgical dressing. A ventilator hissed rhythmically, its mechanical breath filling the silence where his laughter used to be. His left arm was encased in a cast, his torso wrapped tightly in gauze, and a faint scar peeked from under the bandage on his head. The room smelled of antiseptic and something metallic, like blood or fear. I choked out his name. Jacob! My voice breaking as I took his cold hand, his fingers limp in mine. I'm here now, sweetheart. Karen adjusted a monitor, her movements precise but gentle. He's stable, which is promising after the brain surgery to reduce swelling. I forced myself to focus, clinging to her words like a lifeline. What happened? My voice trembled, but I needed answers. Her tone softened, though it didn't waver. The police report says he was riding with his stepfather. The bike hit a guardrail at high speed, around 85 miles per hour. Jacob wasn't wearing a helmet. My knees buckled, the world narrowing to the hiss of the ventilator and the weight of her words. Karen steadied me, guiding me to a chair, its vinyl creaking under my weight. And Ryan? I asked, a strange calm settling over me, like the quiet before a storm. Released. The word echoed, sharp and accusing. While my son lay broken, fighting for every breath, Ryan had walked away with scratches. I stared at Jacob's still form, the steady beep of his heart monitor grounding me. I need the police report, I said, my voice sharpening, the project manager in me waking up, the part that thrived on order and answers. And all medical records. Karen nodded, her expression professional but tinged with understanding. I'll arrange it. As she left, the room's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Jacob's face, and I leaned close to his ear, my voice a fierce whisper. I'm not leaving you, sweetheart, and I'm gonna find out why Ryan isn't here. I pulled out my phone, my fingers steady despite the rage simmering beneath my calm, a fire stoked by every beep of Jacob's monitor. Ryan's number went straight to voicemail, his familiar drawl absent, replaced by a generic recording. I sent a text, Ryan, I'm at St. Joseph's with Jacob. Call me now. No accusations, just a mother needing answers, though my heart screamed betrayal. I sat back, the chair's cold metal biting through my thin sweater, and watched the monitors, their green lines tracing Jacob's fragile hold on life. Where was Ryan? Why had he abandoned my son? What could possibly matter more than being here? The questions churned, each one sharpening my resolve, like a blade honed against stone.
The police report arrived within the hour, delivered by a young aide whose sneakers squeaked on the linoleum. Invoice number 3924, dated October 6, 2025, 11:47 p.m., was a stark document, its clinical language burning into my memory. Ryan had been driving Jacob's motorcycle, a Kawasaki Ninja Jacob had saved for years to buy. Its black and green frame, his pride and joy. Speed, 87 miles per hour in a 40 zone. Ryan's blood alcohol level, 0.09, over the legal limit. Jacob, unhelmeted, had been thrown 30 feet into a ditch, his body crumpling against desert gravel. Ryan's injuries? A scraped elbow and a bruised knee. I stared at the page, my hands shaking, the paper crinkling under my grip. Ryan had been drunk, reckless, and Jacob had paid the price. My phone stayed silent, no response from Ryan. The hospital's air felt heavier now, thick with the weight of betrayal.
I logged into the family banking app, a shared account I'd set up for Jacob's college expenses, to which Ryan had limited access for emergencies. The transaction history stopped me cold. Each entry a fresh wound. Starting the day after the accident, charges rolled in. $2,300 at a Las Vegas casino, the tang of slot machines and whiskey in my imagination. $1,800 on a hotel suite, likely with plush carpets and a view of the Strip. $900 at a high-end steakhouse, where I pictured Ryan clinking glasses, carefree. And $10,000 in cash withdrawals over 3 days, vanishing into the neon haze of Vegas. While Jacob fought for his life, Ryan was gambling and dining, living large on our money. My breath hitched, the antiseptic air stinging my lungs. I opened social media, my fingers trembling as I searched for Ryan's rarely used account. A friend's post caught my eye, tagged at a Vegas nightclub, timestamped last night, the music's bass thumping through the screen. Ryan stood, grinning, a cocktail in hand, his arm around a woman in a sequin dress, her laughter frozen in the photo. The caption, "Big man living large, Vegas nights, baby." I zoomed in, my heart pounding. A small bandage on his elbow was the only sign of the crash that had shattered my son. The desert sunset outside mocked the cold fury building inside me. Fury turned to focus, a switch flipping from mother to strategist. I called my bank's emergency line, the hold music a grating contrast to the urgency in my chest. "This is Margaret Carter. I need all accounts linked to Ryan Evans frozen immediately. Checking, credit, everything." The representative, Paul, didn't hesitate, his voice crisp over the line. "Understood, Mrs. Carter. Can you confirm the reason?" My voice was steel, honed by years of managing crises in boardrooms. "My son's in the ICU after an accident caused by Ryan Evans, who's now spending our money in Las Vegas while Jacob's on a ventilator." Keys clicked rapidly, a sound as satisfying as a lock snapping shut. "Accounts frozen. Any attempted transactions will trigger an alert to you." "Thank you, Paul. I need every transaction detail since October 6th. As I hung up, the hospital room's antiseptic scent mingled with my determination, sharp and unyielding. I leaned toward Jacob, my voice a low promise. "I've got him, sweetheart. He's not getting away with this." Ryan thought he could run, but he'd underestimated the wrong mother. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting stark shadows across the room, as if echoing my resolve. By midnight, my phone lit up with an alert from Paul, its chime cutting through the hospital's quiet hum. Ryan had tried to charge $4,000 at a Vegas jewelry store. Declined. A second attempt at an ATM for $500? Declined. I pictured his confusion, his charming smile faltering as his cards betrayed him in the glitzy shop surrounded by sparkling displays he could no longer afford. I sent a text to Officer Garcia, the first responder listed in the police report. "Ryan Evans is at the Bellagio, Las Vegas. He's wanted for questioning in my son's accident." The message sent with a soft whoosh, like an arrow leaving a bow. The next morning, Karen returned, her sneakers silent now, her face bright with cautious hope. "Jacob's intracranial pressure is decreasing, a small victory. Dr. Nguyen plans to reduce sedation soon if the trend holds." I nodded, clinging to the fragile hope her words offered, the first warmth in days. The sunlight streaming through the window caught dust motes, dancing like tiny sparks of possibility. I checked my email, Paul's detailed report waiting in my inbox. Ryan's spending wasn't new. For months, small transfers, $200 here, $500 there, had gone to an account in Reno owned by a woman named Vanessa Holt. A quick social media search revealed her as a nightlife promoter. Her profile filled with glossy photos, one showing her cozying up to Ryan, his arm around his waist, months before Jacob's accident. My stomach churned, the bitter taste of betrayal rising. Ryan hadn't just abandoned Jacob, he'd been betraying him long before the crash, siphoning money for a life I hadn't seen coming. A text from an unknown Vegas number interrupted my thoughts. "Margaret, it's Ryan. My phone's acting up. Cards aren't working. I'm coming back to Phoenix tomorrow. We need to talk. The words dripped with false urgency, and I ignored them, forwarding the message to Officer Garcia with a note, "He's planning to return to Phoenix, likely desperate after accounts frozen." The hospital's fluorescent lights flickered slightly, as if mirroring my growing suspicion. Another text followed, Ryan's tone shifting to manipulation. "You can't cut me off like this. Jacob would want me there. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." The audacity fueled my focus, like gasoline on a fire. I responded, my words precise. "Officer Garcia is waiting to discuss your DUI and reckless endangerment. Suggest you prioritize that." His reply was instant, frantic. "What the hell are you talking about? This is a misunderstanding." I didn't answer, instead emailing Paul to dig deeper into Vanessa Holt's account. The hospital room felt smaller now, the walls closing in with each revelation, but I pushed back with every keystroke. Jacob's monitors beeped steadily, a lifeline in the chaos. I opened my laptop, documenting every detail. The Vegas charges, the Reno transfers, the nightclub photo. Ryan's betrayal was a digital trail I'd follow to its end. Each piece of evidence a brick in the wall I was building around him. A nurse, Tom, entered, his voice gentle as he checked Jacob's IV. "Keep talking to him, he might hear. Familiar voices help." I nodded, my throat tight, and began recounting memories. Jacob's first motorcycle ride at 16, the wind whipping through his hair as he whooped with joy. The way he'd laugh when I tried to match his energy, always one step ahead. "You're stronger than this," I whispered, my voice catching. "We're going to get through it together." The words felt like a vow, sealed by the steady beep of his heart monitor. By day 3, a breakthrough shattered the hospital's sterile rhythm. Jacob's fingers twitched in my hand. A faint but deliberate pressure. My heart pounded, hope surging like a tide. I called for Dr. Nguyen, who confirmed it was a purposeful response, a sign of emerging consciousness. He said, "We'll start weaning sedation tomorrow, if the trend holds." My voice caught in my throat, asking for the unspoken. "Be sure he has no unexpected visitors?" He understood, and a nurse constant remained outside Jacob's room. It took a village, and this village was protective of its own. Detective Lopez from Phoenix PD arrived that afternoon, her sharp eyes and empathetic demeanor a steady presence in the chaos. "Mrs. Carter, we've been investigating Ryan Evans based on Officer Garcia's report. Your tip about Las Vegas was critical. He's been detained there on charges of theft and fraud, pending extradition to Phoenix for the accident." I shared the financial records, the social media evidence, and Vanessa Holt's involvement, my voice steady, despite the storm inside. Lopez's eyes narrowed as she reviewed the documents. This isn't his first rodeo. We've linked him to similar scams in Nevada and California, targeting partners for financial gain.
My blood ran cold, the room's fluorescent lights casting stark shadows across her face. "You think the accident wasn't an accident?" Lopez hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "We're exploring that. The lack of a helmet on Jacob, Ryan's intoxication, his immediate flight to Vegas, it raises questions. We found a $400,000 life insurance policy on Jacob, taken out 3 months ago, with Ryan as the beneficiary." The room spun, the ventilator's hiss deafening. Ryan hadn't just been reckless. He might have planned this, gambling with my son's life for a payout. I leaned close to Jacob, whispering, "I'm stopping him, sweetheart. He'll never touch you again." The words were a shield, a promise I died to keep. That evening, a call from an unknown number broke the hospital's quiet. A woman's voice, shaky but firm, came through. "Mrs. Carter, I'm Lisa Bennett. I dated Ryan 4 years ago. I saw the Vegas video online. It's gone viral. He did this to me, too. A car accident, a drained account, then he vanished." She paused, her breath hitching. "There was a life insurance policy on me, too." My heart stopped, the pieces of Ryan's pattern snapping into place. "Will you speak to the police?" I asked, my voice steady despite the horror. "Yes," she said. "I should have done it then. I won't stay silent now." I connected her with Detective Lopez. The weight of her testimony added iron to my resolve.
Ryan was a predator, and Jacob was his latest target. On day 5, Jacob opened his eyes, the hospital's morning light catching the hazel flecks I'd memorized since his birth. "Mom?" His voice was a hoarse whisper, but it was him. Tears streamed down my face as I gripped his hand, the warmth of his skin a miracle after days of cold fear. "I'm here, Jacob." He was confused, weak, but awake, his gaze searching mine for answers. Dr. Nguyen confirmed the ventilator could come off soon if his breathing stabilized. As nurses adjusted his equipment, their soft chatter a backdrop to my relief, I updated Jacob gently, avoiding the darkest details. "There was an accident. Ryan was driving. You're safe now." His brow furrowed, fragments of memory surfacing. Ryan, yelling, said I was a burden. The words, broken and raw, were enough. Ryan had been angry, reckless, and Jacob had paid the price. I texted Lopez. "Jacob's awake. Remembers Ryan arguing before the crash." Her reply was swift. "Ryan's being extradited tomorrow. Your evidence is airtight." The hospital room felt lighter, the sunlight streaming through the window, a quiet promise of progress. Days later, Jacob was strong enough to hear the truth. In his hospital room, sunlight glinting off the IV pole, I explained Ryan's betrayal. The money, the woman in Reno, the insurance policy. His face crumpled, the pain of betrayal sharper than his physical wounds. "I trusted him, Mom. How did I miss this?" I took his hand, my voice firm. "He fooled us all, but not anymore. He's facing charges, fraud, endangerment, maybe worse." Jacob's jaw tightened, a spark of his old fire returning. He doesn't get to win. Jacob's recovery was grueling, a marathon of small victories and crushing setbacks. Physical therapy began in the hospital, then continued at home, where I transformed my living room into a rehab space. Parallel bars stood where my coffee table once was, resistance bands draped over chairs, and a walker waited by the door. The desert sun filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows as Jacob gripped the bars, his face set in determination. Each step was a triumph, though pain and frustration often followed. "I hate this," he'd mutter, sweat beading on his forehead, his knuckles white on the bars. "But I won't let him win." I stood nearby, ready to catch him if he faltered, my heart swelling with pride at his stubborn resolve. Detective Lopez kept us updated, her calls a steady drumbeat of progress. Ryan's plea deal fell apart when Lisa Bennett's testimony and my financial evidence strengthened the case. The prosecutor pushed for attempted murder, citing the insurance policy and Ryan's history. Jacob, now using a cane, insisted on attending the trial. "I need to see him face this," he told me, his jaw set, his cane tapping rhythmically on my hardwood floor. The desert air outside was dry and warm, but inside, our resolve was unshakable. In the courtroom, Ryan looked diminished, his charm stripped away under the harsh fluorescent lights. His once confident posture was gone, replaced by slumped shoulders and a hollow gaze. Jacob sat beside me, his cane a silent testament to his survival, its soft tap against the bench a reminder of his strength. When the judge sentenced Ryan to 20 years, 15 for attempted murder, 5 for fraud, Jacob exhaled, a weight lifting from his shoulders. "It's over," he whispered, his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes. Outside, reporters swarmed, their cameras flashing like desert lightning. Jacob leaned on his cane, his voice clear and strong. "Trust your gut. If something feels off, it is. You're stronger than you know." 6 months later, Jacob's recovery had transformed my home. The parallel bars were gone, stored in the garage, replaced by stacks of motorcycle magazines, their glossy covers a reminder of his passion. The desert sunsets painted the sky in hues of pink and gold as we sat on the porch, the air warm and fragrant with creosote. Jacob handed me a leather journal from our Florence trip together, a post-recovery gift to ourselves, the leather soft and worn under my fingers. "For you," he said, his voice steady. Inside he had written, "To Mom who fought when I couldn't, your strength saved me." I hugged him, the journal a symbol of our shared survival, its weight grounding me in the moment. 2 years after the accident, we returned to St. Joseph's, the hospital's familiar antiseptic scent stirring memories as we passed room 407. Jacob paused, his cane tapping lightly on the linoleum, his gaze distant but resolute. "I thought that room was the end," he said softly, the sunlight catching the scars on his face, now fading but ever present. "Now I know it was the start." Ryan was a fading memory, his name irrelevant, a ghost in the desert wind. Jacob's blog, Riding Forward, had thousands of followers, his story inspiring others to spot manipulators like Ryan and reclaim their lives. My talks at community events had sparked a local support group for financial abuse survivors, their voices echoing ours in a chorus of resilience. As we left the hospital, the Phoenix sky stretched wide and blue above us, the air warm against our skin. I looked at my son, his stride stronger, his spirit unbreakable, the cane now more a companion than a crutch. "We survived," I said, my voice thick with gratitude. "And so can they." Jacob nodded, a small smile breaking through. "Let's keep telling them that." If my story moved you, please comment below with your own experiences. What gave you strength to rise again? And if you believe in stories of resilience, subscribe to the channel to hear more like ours.